my song on so many different dials. Cause I got more hits than a disciplined child. So when they see me, everybody barracks, man, I'm like...
What's going on, guys? This is the Club of the Man 1993 coming at you for another retro WrestleMania review as now mentioned to WrestleMania 27. Going into WrestleMania 27, I knew I was getting myself into watching one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but this is the first time I actually sat down and watched the whole thing of it. And let me tell you guys something. Despite being a late bloomer fan, I really hated this WrestleMania. I absolutely hated it. Really, if it wasn't for two things, The Rock being the host and the Taker and Triple H match, I would consider this the worst WrestleMania of all time. I am not even joking. This WrestleMania had just so many... Well, WrestleMania 9, I'm still going to say, is the worst WrestleMania of all time. A lot of people said WrestleMania 11, but honestly, I probably put WrestleMania 11 just a little bit more, maybe like, WrestleMania 15 or WrestleMania 1 or 2, maybe. But definitely this is the second worst WrestleMania. Again, if it wasn't for the Taker and Triple H match or The Rock being the host, I would have had this as the worst WrestleMania of all time. This was just horrible. They had all the talent to make this a great show. They had a lot of random tag matches, which also hurt the show. There was one thing in particular, though, that really hurt this show, though. But I will get to that when we get to it. And I might do a little bit of long ranting on that in this video. So this video is a little bit longer. I apologize, but I just got to rant on my thoughts on one particular thing that happened in this show. So let's get right into it. The date was April 3rd, 2011 at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, Georgia, of course. We opened up with a segment from The Rock. And The Rock had a couple segments backstage and throughout the show. And this first one was... just The Rock opening up a show, greeting the audience, and just getting the crowd hyped up with, like, just repeating after me with you, though, if you smell, and whatnot. And he was promising that this was going to be the most memorable WrestleMania of all time. Rock, it was memorable, but it was not memorable in a good way, let's put it that way. But it wasn't his fault. He did all he could. It's just the way the matches were executed and whatnot, and some of the storylines is what really made this WrestleMania terrible. There's a couple other segments with him backstage. There was a moment with him when he was talking to Eve Torres, who there wasn't a Divas Championship match, but there was a mixed tag match though in the night. But we didn't have the. I think Eve Torres was the Divas Champion at the time. I'm not 100% sure, but it was her, and then she was like and Brock was like, okay, whoever walks around the corner next, I'll make their dreams come true. Well, first it was Mae Young. And then Eve Torres escorted Mae Young to her seat, and then we had next person who walked down the corner was Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was pretty cool seeing them face off. Is he ready to kick some rear end tonight? He's like, you bet I am, because Stone Cold Steve Austin was the special guest referee in the match I'm going to really be ranting about. And then there was another segment where this is around the time where the build for him and Cena was beginning, and then he's like, John Cena's biggest fan. I need to talk to him, and it ended up being Pee Wee Herman. It was like maybe one or two others, but for the most part, the Rock segments were pretty entertaining for the most part. But that's how we opened it up though, with the Rock just getting the crowd hyped up for 10 minutes. Then we get into the first match, which I think for the first time in WWE history, they opened up. The first match was one of the world titles. We had the World Heavyweight Championship. It was Edge with Christian taking on Alberto Del Rio. This is his first WrestleMania. He won the 2011 Royal Rumble with his ring announcer Ricardo Rodriguez and his bodyguard, but I think he was also his rookie on this next season of NXT, Brodus Clay. Boy, I remember briefly Brodus Clay, but again, him being with Alberto Del Rio seemed kind of random at the time. I'm sure it was better than what he ended up being. The match was solid. It didn't blow the roof off of the Georgia Dome or anything, but it was still a solid match. I feel like though it does get a little more appreciated. It wasn't really one of Edge's greatest matches, but I feel like with the fact that in like 2 weeks or so Edge would then retire due to his neck injury, I think this match is a little more appreciated for being his final match. again, it was still a solid match. I enjoyed it. The whole idea with, the story was pretty simple. Alberto won the Royal Rumble. He challenged Edge for the world title. Of course, he was just, playing mind games, getting into his head that he's coming for him. It's his destiny. It's my destiny to be the world heavyweight champion. And of course, you have Brodus Clay, going after him also, being Del Rio's bodyguard. But then Edge, was in the corner of, Christian was in the corner of Edge. So we had that. But again, solid opener. Nothing really too exciting to write home about, but it was still solid. We then had Cody Rhodes taking on Rey Mysterio. This match came about because back in January, in a match on SmackDown, Rey Mysterio had a knee brace on, and I guess when he did the 619, he broke Cody's nose, and he had like reconstructive surgery on his face. After that, he had to wear that mask. The match they had wasn't too bad. It just, with the story and everything, to me, it didn't feel like a WrestleMania worthy match. It was still decent for what it was. But what made me not quite enjoy this match much, it just didn't feel like, a WrestleMania type match. I was glad to see, Cody Rhodes get a chance. He won the match. I was happy to see that. He had a chance to, have a match as a singles competitor, since last year he was just in the triple threat match with the implosion of Legacy. But with just along with the knee brace and the mask, again, it was all right. Simple storytelling, but it didn't feel like it really fit for like a WrestleMania type match to me, honestly. It was still a decent match, but it was kind of slow also as well. But I survived it, so I'll give it that. Then we had this really weird backstage segment with Snoop Dogg and Teddy Long doing auditions for Snoop Dogg's tour, or whatever the heck it was. We had the Great Khali and Beth Phoenix singing a song from Grease. Zack Ryder, though, sung Friday until Rowdy Piper came from out of nowhere and nailed him in the head with a coconut. But I still enjoyed that. Like, Zack Ryder actually singing Friday was actually, pretty good. I'm like, okay, this doesn't take me out. But Great Khali singing, I'm just like, no. And then we had Chris Masters dancing with Yoshitatsu while he was singing "We Will Rock You." Of course, very offbeat. I know they're trying to write that this that he was not going to be a good singer, not going to be getting the part on the tour, but still, it was dreadful to watch. And then we had Hornswoggle, who apparently couldn't talk. And then when Snoop Dogg and Teddy Long leave, he puts on like shades and stuff, and he starts rapping with the Bellas dancing beside him. And I'm just like, okay, no. It was just a giant waste of my time, pretty much. Except for Zack Ryder saying Friday. That was actually pretty cool. Everything else, that was a waste of time. And things continue to feel like a waste of time. And especially when I get to the one match I want to rant about, I want to talk about something else that was left off this card that people know about pretty well. But we then had this match. I don't know why. Again, this is a match. If Cody Rhodes and Rey Mysterio was like okay for being on WrestleMania, then this definitely should not have been on WrestleMania. It was so pointless. It was a 8-man tag match. It was the Big Show, Kane, Santino Marella, and Kofi Kingston taking on the Core, the ripoff of 4 members of the Nexus on the former Nexus on SmackDown. Wade Barrett, Ezekiel Jackson, Heath Slater, and Justin Gabriel. The Core. Not a good faction. Didn't go over too well. And, the Nexus has already been buried enough the way it was. The Core got buried in this match as well. They got pretty much squashed in, who knows when. Just like a couple seconds. It was just pointless. I don't know why they did it. No one really gained anything from it. Moving on. Then we had this match. It was Randy Orton taking on CM Punk. CM Punk had just taken over the new Nexus, and this was right before the summer of Punk, where Punk went on to just become probably the biggest star in the company probably at the time. Even though they tried just to bury him by transferring all his momentum over to Triple H and Kevin Nash, they still couldn't stop Punk as Punk won the championship. And at the end of this year, started his 434-day title reign. But this match with Randy Orton, the story was kind of similar to the story between Randy Orton and Triple H from a couple years ago. Except Punk didn't go as dark as Orton did. Punk was just trying to get revenge on Orton for when Legacy first formed or whatever. It was back in Unforgiven 2008, when Orton punted him in the skull backstage um before, and that's what caused Punk to vacate the World Heavyweight Championship that year. That's when he won Money in the Bank the first time, and then with Punk being charged of the new Nexus, this is when Punk felt it was his time to get back at Orton. Pretty much that basic storytelling, but Punk did, but those matches where if Orton would have won, he all members of whichever member of the Nexus was there would not be allowed to be at ringside for Punk's match, which Orton beat all of them. And then Punk went as far also as injuring Orton's leg, which played a factor in this match. This match, I don't know how to think. I think it was completely underwhelming. It was okay, kind of boring. Like, I expected these two to have a pretty good match, like a lot better than what we got. It was just slow. It was, again, though, Randy Orton is a babyface. And Randy Orton has said time and time again he hates playing a babyface. And it pretty much showed in this match. I mean, he did sell like his leg injury pretty well, because he did go for a punt on Punk, because he had punted all members of the new Nexus. But Orton's leg like buckled and gave out. Like, that was a little sick looking to watch. But the match overall, not really anything to say about it. Somewhat boring. It was okay, but I expected a lot better from these two. Orton would win, but wouldn't matter because Punk would go on to, again, have the 2011 that he had, starting in the summer when it was the summer of Punk, and then leading to him starting his 434 championship title reign at Survivor Series at the end of that year. But yeah, the match was meh. All right. Here it comes. Here comes the rant of this review. This is one of the biggest reasons why I hate this WrestleMania. It's not just the match. It's what also went on before the match and the build. And I am sure lucky that I was not watching the WWE full time around this time. Even though 2011 seemed like it was like a decent year for the WWE, it wasn't really a bad year. All I gotta say is why? This completely ruined the show for me. I'm talking about this match. Michael Cole taking on Jerry the King Lawler. Jack Swagger was Michael Cole's trainer, and he was in his corner, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was the special guest referee. Oh. This, to me, has got to be considered the worst match in wrestling history. And this whole thing was just a train wreck. Again, not even the match, but again, Michael Cole around this time was experimenting in being a heel announcer, because this was a time also when he even admitted on Daniel Bryan's documentary that he was was told to personally attack Daniel Bryan, because that's around time again they're trying to test him out as a heel announcer. And let me tell you something. Michael Cole as a heel announcer was one of the most annoying things I had ever heard in my few years of watching WWE. More annoying than Alicia Fox, more annoying than Stephanie McMahon's constant promos of her not getting any comeuppance whatsoever. And Michael Cole was attacking Jerry Lawler for like 7 or 8 months leading up to this match. And if they're trying to give Jerry Lawler a reason to have a WrestleMania match, they could have done a better job than having him face Michael Cole, a commentator, for crying out loud. A guy who has no wrestling history probably whatsoever. And again, I haven't watched that many Raws or SmackDowns leading up to this WrestleMania, but just this one show, I was getting annoyed as heck. There's a difference between, a heel commentator sounding intelligent and a heel commentator sounding ridiculous and stupid and like a complete child. And that's what Michael Cole sounded like this whole entire time. Nitpicking at the smallest things the baby faces would do. Again, I don't know how any WWE fan got through watching a lot of the Raws or SmackDowns during this time, despite the fact this was still a decent year. Because I would have gone nuts. This made me go nuts. And then the match itself. This is where it makes me mad. Daniel Bryan and Sheamus were supposed to have a United States Championship match that got pushed onto the pre-show that turned into a lumberjack match. The match went 2 minutes before it turned to a battle royal, just for the heck of it, and the Great Khali won it. You had to leave Daniel Bryan and Sheamus off the card for a match with the Core, that stupid Snoop Dogg audition thing. And there's another tag match also that I felt was a complete waste of time. We were going to talk about shortly. But this took the cake for me. The match between these two was probably like a little over 10 minutes. A little too long. But, whatever. That part didn't bother me. What bothered me was entrances, the ending, and everything took up about a half an hour of the show. A half an hour of Jerry the King Lawler and Michael Cole bickering at each other, fighting, putting on just a terrible wrestling match and you have Jack Swagger, which, again, I talked about last year, Jack Swagger's title was well forgotten. This made Swagger look even worse. Stone Cold Steve Austin couldn't even save this match at all whatsoever. This was not a WrestleMania match. And then the worst part was, not only did we have to go through this dreadful, unorthodox looking match, after minutes of Stone Cold Steve Austin celebrating with everyone, and with Jerry the King Lawler for his WrestleMania victory, we then have the anonymous general manager, come on and say that Stone Cold Steve Austin's actions during the match were unnecessary as a referee. Therefore, Jerry the King Lawler is disqualified and Michael Cole wins. I sat through 30 minutes of all the annoying entrances, all the bickering, all the annoying commentary this whole show, except whenever JR took over and Booker T, and then with Justin Roberts. That wasn't too bad. But I sat through all that just to see a stupid disqualification finish. I was so mad. I am sorry. Again, I've seen some really terrible segments, terrible booking. This was an absolute train wreck. A complete waste of 30 minutes on WrestleMania where you could have easily had Daniel Bryan and Sheamus in place of this. They would have put on a heck of a lot better match. I don't blame the two of them for being pissed off that they got pushed onto the pre-show and then their match got thrown out the window, turned into just a pointless battle royale. Again, I don't know how I would have survived back then, as I was just so annoyed with Michael Cole's commentary. Seriously, anytime Michael Cole now is going to get into the ring, I hope he gets his rear end whooped. Even though he's finally calmed down. But the worst part was, him and Jerry did make up a couple months later after feuding again for the next couple pay-per-views, which is stupid. We had Michael Cole completely settle down once Jerry the King Lawler suffered a heart attack on Raw back in 2012. And then he's acting like he's Jerry's best friend after that. Again, this match and just the commentary, the bickering between these two just annoyed the living crap out of me. And again, this was probably the biggest reason why I was this close to almost considering this the worst WrestleMania of all time. Because of all that. WrestleMania 9, again, had just a bunch of no marquee matches, a bunch of average to terrible matches, Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez. But this at least had, The Rock, and it did have a great match that we're going to talk about next, actually. Oh my goodness. But this just drove me nuts. Let's move on now, as I've done my ranting as much as I need to about that. WrestleMania Streak match number 19. It was a no-holds-barred match, the second WrestleMania match between Triple H and The Undertaker. An awesome match. Match of the night by far, no doubt about it. Anonymous decision. This match was awesome. Now, I know later in the match it did start to drag a little bit, but to me, it made sense. This was a match that honestly had me second-guessing who was closer to defeating The Undertaker and ending his streak before Brock Lesnar did. As you know, their match next year Triple H and Brock and not Triple H, Brock, Triple H and Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell was definitely my favorite though. Still though, out of all these three, I have watched WrestleMania 20 before. I'm going to watch it again before I review it, but because Shawn Michaels, great performer, had a shot, but Triple H physically looked like he was able to break the streak. Also, if he's not number one, he's a close second to Shawn Michaels. And Shawn Michaels in this build-up even was doubting Triple H for even thinking he was going to be able to defeat the streak. Because Triple H around this time again, him and Undertaker were both starting to slow down their careers and become more so part timers. But and again, Triple H said the only thing he really has left to do is try to break the streak. Is a no holds bar match, which was perfect because they had one match already, but two men who are absolutely physical beat the living crap out of each other to the point that Undertaker, had to be, helped out of the arena. Like with how this match slowed down a little bit, but with the near falls and whatnot, the physicality of this match was what made it very good, despite it not being, just like a big, fast-paced, big man match, which it was for some time, but it was just physical. And Taker with that Hell's Gate chokehold, it took him like a couple minutes at least for get Triple H to tap out. When you've gotten Triple H to tap out, like Chris Benoit, well, John Cena did also, but that was still good also. And The Undertaker, getting Triple H to tap out, you really make it, look like you really had to do something to get Triple H to tap out. And that's why I gotta say Triple H, in my opinion, was either the most difficult opponent or the second closest that broke Undertaker's streak. I mean, we all know who did break the streak, Brock Lesnar, but those two were able to, have a second guess that, Taker was not going to be able to, continue on and keep the streak going. But just a physical, amazing match. I can't wait to talk about the end of an era match at next year's WrestleMania. But we'll get to that. Getting back to, some terrible stuff, we had this mixed tag match. It was John Morrison, Snooki, and Trish Stratus taking on Dolph Ziggler and Lay Cole. This was pointless also. Why do we have to have this? No Divas Championship match. And they barely got any time also in this match at all, because again, this is where Divas got no time at all to wrestle. And also, this is where the tension with John Morrison started to lead John Morrison out of WWE by the end of the year. I believe he wanted his real-life girlfriend Melina to be in this match, but she couldn't because she was a heel. But there was some tension backstage, and John Morrison received crappy booking for the rest of the year, and he would leave the WWE by the end of the year. And now he's been on the independent scenes in AAA, Lucha Underground, Lucha Libre, a couple other places, but he's been tearing up there. But it's a shame because John Morrison was definitely a very underutilized talent. He could have been a world champion, I felt, from the stuff that I've seen him do. Again, match was pointless. Morrison, Snooki, and Stratus win. Moving on to this main event, by far the worst main event in WrestleMania history. The WWE Championship match. It was The Miz taking on John Cena. Basic storytelling, well, for the most part, Miz tried to, eliminate John Cena at the Royal Rumble so he wouldn't face him at WrestleMania, but then Cena won the Raw Elimination Chamber match to qualify to face him at WrestleMania. And then holding with The Rock, returning after 7 years to host WrestleMania, and the build up for that to, start the feud with him and Cena. The match was just boring and pointless, terrible, and it just ended up being an angle just to start the build for Rock and Cena, which the first one between them was good. Second one, we'll talk about them at WrestleMania 29, but yeah, it was. Miz was just, getting a good push, but he got pushed aside, and then Cena took the title off of him at Extreme Rules in a triple threat steel cage match. So the Miz pretty much was just used as a pawn to help Rock and Cena start their feud. It's a shame. I mean, Miz won, retaining, but because he had help from The Rock. Originally started with a double count, but then The Rock came out, saying, reading the anonymous general manager thing on the laptop, saying it doesn't matter what you think, and then he says that the host, I demand this match restarts. There's going to be no counts. There's going to be a decision. But instead of just The Rock to, hit the rock bottom on John Cena to start their feud going and get the win. But then afterwards, Miz and Rock also exchange words. So The Rock gets back in the ring and lays a smackdown on The Miz. It was cool for what it was, but it didn't save the show. Horrible show this WrestleMania was. Again, if it wasn't for Taker and Triple H and, The Rock doing some of his good segments as well. I would have considered this the worst WrestleMania of all time. This was terrible. The matches, that should have been good were like nothing really spectacular. I'm just glad I got through this one. D plus is the grade I'm going to give this WrestleMania, a D plus. What are your thoughts on WrestleMania 27? Do you think Jerry the King Lawler and Michael Cole also is the worst wrestling match of all time? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Please sure to click that like and subscribe for more content on this channel, and follow me on Twitter at DemandAirboy93. I'll watch WrestleMania 28 today, which is still one of my favorite WrestleManias. I've watched this whole WrestleMania before, but I'm going to watch it again just to get another feel of it, and I will hopefully review that probably later, or get that upload maybe either later on tonight or sometime tomorrow. So that's it, guys. Thank you for tuning in for this live review. I mean, it's not live. It's just a regular review. But anyways, thanks again for tuning in for this review, guys. I'll catch you on WrestleMania 28. And also check out my Clash of Champions printed match card I finished last night as well. So that's it, guys. I'm checking out. I'll see you all later. Have a great day.